Commander Thexilor had served on Sentinel 9 for 12 years, and nothing interesting had ever happened in that time, which was exactly how he liked it. The Deep Space Monitoring Station floated at the very edge of Valorian territory, where the darkness between stars stretched forever, and the only thing to watch was empty space. He was reviewing supply reports when the alarms started screaming. Every console in the command center lit up at once, and 3 junior officers jumped from their seats as red warning lights bathed the room in crimson urgency. "Commander!" Ensign Veltran shouted from the sensor station, her voice cracking with something that might have been fear or excitement. "Long-range sensors are detecting an unknown vessel incoming fast." Thexilor crossed to her station in 4 quick strides, his scaled hands gripping the edge of her console as he studied the readings that scrolled across the screen. His eyes widened despite his decades of military discipline. "That cannot be correct," he said quietly, then louder, "Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array. This has to be a malfunction." "Already running, sir," Veltran replied, her clawed fingers dancing across the controls. "Diagnostics show all systems operating within normal parameters. The reading is accurate." Thexilor stared at the numbers that shouldn't exist. The vessel was traveling at 0.89 times the speed of light, a velocity that made his blood run cold, because the fastest ship in the Valorian Imperial Fleet could barely reach 0.34. "Identify the vessel," he ordered, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Cross-reference all known energy signatures and hull compositions." The computer worked for 30 seconds that felt like 30 hours. "No match found," the station's artificial intelligence announced in its flat mechanical voice. "Energy signature does not correspond to any recorded spacefaring civilization. Hull composition unknown. Propulsion system unidentified. Vessel origin cannot be determined." "Hail them on all standard frequencies," Thexilor commanded as he moved to the communication station himself. Silence answered their hails. No response came on any of the 47 frequency bands used by the galactic community. The vessel simply kept coming, like a bullet, fired from the darkness itself. "Distance?" Thexilor asked. "Currently, 12 light hours out and closing," Veltran reported. "At current speed, they will reach our position in approximately 13 hours and 22 minutes. Thexilor activated the emergency channel to Fleet Command on Valoria Prime. It took several minutes for the signal to reach the capital world, and several more for the response to return. Admiral Cassandra's face appeared on the view screen, her silver scales gleaming under the command center lights back on the homeworld, and her expression showing the irritation of someone who had been pulled from more important matters. "This had better be worth interrupting a strategy session, Commander," she said coldly. "Unknown vessel approaching at impossible velocity," Thexilor reported crisply. 0.89 C with no identification and no response to hails, requesting immediate support. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the data packet he had transmitted alongside his message. "Your sensors are malfunctioning," she said after a long pause. "No known civilization can achieve those velocities. Recalibrate your equipment and report back." "Admiral, with respect, we have run 3 complete diagnostics." "Then run a 4th. Cassandra interrupted. "I will not deploy fleet assets based on faulty readings from an aging station. Recalibrate and confirm, Commander." The channel went dead before he could respond. Thexilor felt his jaw muscles tighten, but he had not survived 12 years on a frontier station by questioning orders from Fleet Command. "Run another diagnostic," he told Veltran, though he already knew what it would show. 2 hours passed, and the diagnostic confirmed what they already knew. The sensors were working perfectly, and the impossible vessel was still approaching. More concerning was what happened next. "Commander," Veltran's voice was high and tight with tension. "The vessel just changed course. It adjusted trajectory by 47 degrees. "Show me," Thexelor demanded. The tactical display showed the vessel's path, and the recent course correction, and Thexelor felt ice form in his chest. Any ship traveling at nearly light speed needed hours or even days to change course, because the forces involved would crush the crew into paste against the bulkheads. Even with the best inertial dampeners known to science, a high-speed maneuver could kill everyone aboard. This vessel had turned like a bird, changing direction mid-flight. "Calculate the G-forces required for that maneuver," he ordered. The computer processed the request. Maneuver generated approximately 947 times standard gravity, the AI announced. No known biological organism could survive such forces. Crew status, presumed deceased, or non-biological. "Or something we have never encountered before," Thexelor said quietly. He opened the emergency channel again, and this time he did not wait for the Admiral to speak first. "Fleet Command, the unknown vessel has performed a high-speed course correction that should be impossible. I am declaring a Code Violet situation and requesting immediate military response." Code Violet meant potential first contact with an unknown species. Admiral Cassandra's expression shifted from irritation to concern as she reviewed the new data. "Confirmed, Commander," she said after a tense pause. "The heavy cruiser Dominant Reach is being diverted to your position. Captain Drelmar will take tactical command upon arrival. You are to continue monitoring and relay all data directly to Fleet Intelligence." "Understood, Admiral," Thexelor replied with relief flooding through him. The Dominant Reach was one of the newest and most powerful warships in the fleet, and Captain Drelmar had fought in the border wars. Help was coming. The channel closed, and Thexelor allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply before turning back to his crew. "Time until the cruiser arrives?" he asked. 16 hours at maximum fleet speed, Veltran calculated. "And time until the unknown vessel reaches us?" 9 hours and 14 minutes. Thexelor nodded slowly, because that was the answer he had expected. They would be alone when the unknown vessel arrived. 6 hours later, everything changed again. "Sir," Veltran's voice cracked completely this time. "The vessel is accelerating. New velocity reading at 0.95 c." Thexelar's hearts both skipped a beat as he watched the tactical display update. The unknown vessel had not just accelerated. It had done so while traveling at relativistic speeds, which should have required more energy than most stations could generate in a year. "Recalculate arrival time," he ordered, though his voice sounded distant to his own ears. "New arrival time, 4 hours and 18 minutes, Veltran whispered. The Dominant Reach was still 11 hours away. "Get me the cruiser's captain," Thexelor commanded, and when Drelmar's scarred face appeared on screen, he did not waste time with pleasantries. "Captain, the unknown vessel has accelerated beyond our fastest theoretical models. It will reach Sentinel 9 hours before you can arrive." Captain Drelmar studied the data streaming across his own displays, and his expression hardened into something that looked like grudging respect. "No ship should be able to do what that thing is doing," he said slowly. "Commander Thexelor, if that vessel shows any hostile intent, you are authorized to defend yourselves with all available weapons. The Dominant Reach will pursue at maximum speed, but," he paused, and met Thexelor's eyes through the screen. "If they want to catch you, we both know we cannot stop them." The channel closed, and silence filled the command center. Thexelor looked at his crew of 17 young officers, who had signed up for a quiet posting watching empty space, and now faced something that made the Empire's best military minds admit helplessness. "All personnel to battle stations," he ordered quietly. "Charge all defensive batteries and raise shields to maximum. If we are making first contact today, we will do so ready to fight." Outside the station's viewports, the stars blazed cold and eternal, while somewhere in that darkness, something impossible was coming closer with every passing second. The Imperial Palace on Valoria Prime had stood for 400 years, as a symbol of Valorian dominance over 47 star systems. But today, its ancient halls buzzed with an energy that felt more like panic than power. Admiral Cassandra strode through the corridors toward the High Command War Room, while junior officers scattered from her path like fish fleeing a predator. Her aide struggled to keep pace while reading from a data tablet that kept updating with increasingly disturbing information. 3 more galactic powers have confirmed detection of the vessel, Admiral, the young officer reported breathlessly. The Drexian Confederacy, the Matriarch Collective, and the Star Union all report identical readings, and all are equally unable to identify it. So we are not dealing with faulty sensors, Cassandra said grimly. We are dealing with something real and unknown. The war room doors opened before her with a hiss of hydraulics, and the conversations inside died instantly as she entered. 12 senior officers stood around the central holographic display, which showed the vessel's projected course through Valorian space. The projection made Cassandra's blood run cold. The vessel was not heading toward the frontier worlds, or the mining colonies, or even the military outposts. Its trajectory would take it straight through the heart of the Empire, toward the core worlds, where billions of Valorians lived and worked. Fleet Marshal Grenthor, the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire, gestured toward the display with one thick arm. The vessel passed Sentinel 9 47 minutes ago, he announced in his deep, rumbling voice. Commander Thexilor reports that it flew past the station at 0.95 C, without slowing or acknowledging their presence. It is now on a direct course toward the Velcara system. Velcara has a population of 6 billion, someone whispered. I want a defensive line established immediately, Cassandra commanded. Deploy everything we have in the sector, cruisers, destroyers, carrier groups. I want a wall of ships between that vessel and our core worlds. Already underway, Admiral, Grenthor replied. 12 warships are moving to intercept points along the vessel's projected path. Dominant Reach, Stellar Fang, Void Hammer, and 9 others. They will form a blockade at the Teshvar Junction in 14 hours. Will 14 hours be enough? Cassandra asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. The vessel will reach the junction in 16 hours, Grenthor confirmed. We will have 2 hours to prepare. The holographic display flickered and changed to show detailed scans of the mysterious vessel, and what they saw made little sense to any of them. The ship was small by military standards, barely 40 meters from bow to stern, which was smaller than most courier vessels, and its hull appeared smooth and seamless, with no visible weapons ports or engine exhaust. Where is the propulsion system? Demanded Admiral Seklan from Naval Intelligence, her voice sharp with frustration. Every ship needs engines, and I see nothing. No plasma vents, no antimatter containment, no gravitational distortion fields. Moving. Post. Unknown, replied Dr. Yelsha, from where she stood at the edge of the room. The xeno-archaeologist was not military, but she had been summoned because she studied ancient civilizations, and sometimes the past held clues to the present. Everyone turned to look at her. You have a theory, Doctor? Cassandra asked. Yelsha stepped forward, and the holographic light played across her elderly features as she studied the vessel with eyes that had examined 1,000 dead worlds. In my 50 years of research, I have found evidence of civilizations that existed millions of years before any current spacefaring species, she said slowly. Ruins on dead worlds, mathematical formulas carved into moon surfaces, structures that defy our understanding of physics. We call them the precursors, though we know almost nothing about them. You think this is a precursor vessel? Seklan asked, with skepticism dripping from her words. Those are myths and legends, stories to scare children. The myths all agree on one thing, Yelsha continued quietly. The precursors had technology far beyond anything we have achieved. They could move between stars in heartbeats manipulate gravity like we manipulate matter, and build machines that lasted eons. Even if precursors existed, Grenthor interrupted, they disappeared millions of years ago. Why would one of their vessels appear now? Yelsha had no answer for that. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the holographic projectors, until an aide burst through the doors with his face flushed purple with excitement or fear. "Marshal, Admiral, the vessel has reached the blockade." Every officer in the room turned to the main display, which now showed real-time tactical data from the 12 warships waiting at the Teshfar Junction. The dominant Reach sat at the center of the formation, with 5 cruisers spread in a picket line to either side, while 4 destroyers hung back in reserve. It was enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. They watched the unknown vessel approach at impossible speed. "All ships are hailing on every known frequency," reported the communications officer monitoring the feed. "No response from the vessel." "Target locks?" Grenthor asked. "All ships have weapons locked," came the reply, waiting for engagement orders. Cassandra gripped the edge of the holographic table until her claws left scratches in the metal, because this was the moment when everything could go wrong. If they fired first, and the vessel was peaceful, they might start a war with beings who had technology beyond their understanding. But if they waited, and the vessel was hostile, those 12 ships and their crews might die. "Tell Captain Drelmar to hold fire unless the vessel shows hostile intent," she ordered. "But if it tries to run that blockade, he is authorized to engage." The tactical display showed the vessel closing the distance. 10,000 kilometers, 5,000 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers. Everyone in the war room held their breath. Then, the impossible happened again. The vessel did not slow down, or stop, or turn away from the blockade. Instead, it flew straight into the formation at 0.95 times the speed of light, and somehow threaded between all 12 warships without touching a single one. The maneuver took less than 2 seconds. By the time the warships could react, the vessel was already 50,000 kilometers past them and accelerating away. "How?" Seklan breathed. "The reaction time alone, the calculations required. Something that can process tactical data faster than our best combat computers," Grenthor said quietly, "and that can maneuver at relativistic speeds without turning its crew into paste." Then the vessel did something that made everyone in the war room question their understanding of physics. It decelerated from 0.95 times light speed to a complete stop in under 3 seconds. The G-forces should have torn the ship apart. Instead, it simply floated in space like it had been there all along. "Channel to that vessel," Cassandra commanded. "Now!" The communications officer worked frantically at his console, while sweat beaded on his scaled forehead. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission," he announced suddenly. "The vessel is trying to communicate, but the format is strange." "Strange how?" Cassandra demanded. "It is using an old Valorian diplomatic protocol," the officer replied with confusion evident in his voice. "Very old. Approximately 400 years old from when the Empire was first establishing contact with other species." Every senior officer exchanged glances, because 400 years ago, the Valorian Empire had been young and weak, and had used simple radio transmissions because they had nothing better. This vessel, with its impossible speed and physics-defying maneuvers, was using technology the Valorians had abandoned centuries ago. "Play the transmission," Cassandra ordered. Static filled the war room for several seconds before a voice emerged, clear and strange, and speaking an ancient Valorian dialect that sounded alien even to native speakers. "Requesting permission to approach," the voice said, with an accent that made the words sound liquid and flowing. "We come in peace." Grenthor looked at Cassandra, with one eye ridge raised in question. "That voice," Seklan whispered. The vocal patterns do not match any of the 23 known spacefaring species. The rhythm is wrong. The breathing patterns are different. "What do we do, Admiral?" Grenthor asked quietly. Cassandra stared at the holographic representation of the small vessel that had just humiliated the Imperial fleet, and thought about all the ways this could end badly. Then she thought about what history would say if she fired on the first beings to seek peaceful contact. Grant them permission to approach the dominant reach, she decided, but tell Captain Drelmar to keep all weapons hot and shields at maximum. If they make one wrong move, he is to destroy them. The communication went out, and they waited. "The vessel is moving," Tactical reported, "approaching the flagship at standard docking speed. They are deploying a boarding shuttle." "A boarding shuttle?" Grenthor repeated. "They want to come aboard?" "Apparently they want to meet face to face," Cassandra replied. "Dr. Yelsha, prepare to join me on the dominant reach. You may be about to meet the precursors you have studied your entire life." Yelsha smiled grimly, because meeting one's gods was never quite what anyone expected. The flagship dominant reach maintained battle stations, as the small boarding shuttle attached itself to the primary airlock like a parasite finding a host. Captain Drelmar stood in the docking bay, surrounded by 30 armed security personnel who all had their weapons trained on the sealed door. Admiral Cassandra arrived by emergency transport, with Dr. Yelsha at her side, and both officers moved to stand beside the captain, while the rest of the security team formed a defensive perimeter. "Bioscan complete," announced the ship's AI in its emotionless voice. "Single lifeform detected aboard the shuttle. Bipedal configuration. Oxygen breathing. Carbon-based biology. Species identification unknown." "Atmospheric compatibility?" Drelmar asked. "The being can breathe our standard atmosphere without assistance," the AI confirmed. That detail made everyone more nervous rather than less, because it meant the visitor had either evolved on a world with chemistry remarkably similar to Valoria, or had biological engineering capabilities that seemed almost casual in their sophistication. The AI continued, "Airlock ready to open." Cassandra nodded to Drelmar, who gestured to his security chief. The airlock doors hissed open, and fog rolled out from the pressure differential. Everyone tensed. A figure emerged from the mist, walking with an easy, confident stride that suggested either supreme courage or complete ignorance of danger. As the fog cleared, they could see the visitor more clearly, and what they saw made no sense at all. The being was approximately 1.7 meters tall, which was short by Valorian standards, with smooth skin and a shade of brown that reminded Yelsha of desert sand. It had bilateral symmetry with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head crowned with dark hair that fell to its shoulders. The face was strange, flat, with forward-facing eyes like a predator, but also expressive in ways that felt almost familiar, with a mouth that curved upward in what might have been a smile. The being wore a simple gray flight suit with no armor or visible weapons, and moved with a grace that suggested excellent physical conditioning. "That is not a precursor," Yelsha whispered with disappointment heavy in her voice. The visitor stopped 3 meters from the Valorian officers, and performed what looked like a formal greeting gesture, placing one hand over its chest and inclining its head slightly. Then, it spoke in perfect modern Valorian, with that same liquid accent they had heard over the radio. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing the people of Earth," the being said with its voice carrying clearly through the docking bay. "Charts from one of your deep space survey probes approximately 40 years ago, and have spent that time preparing to make contact. I apologize that it took us this long to visit." Cassandra exchanged glances with Drelmar and Yelsha, because this was not what any of them had expected. "Earth?" Cassandra repeated slowly, searching her memory for that designation. "That is a catalogued world in our survey database. System designation AR7741. It was surveyed 200 years ago and classified as Category 7, pre-industrial civilization with no spaceflight capability." The being called Sarah Chen smiled wider, and something in that smile made Cassandra's instincts scream warnings. "Your survey was accurate at the time," Sarah replied calmly. 200 years ago, my people were still using sailing ships to cross our oceans, and swords to fight our wars. We had no concept of space travel, or faster-than-light physics. "Impossible," Drelmar stated flatly. "No species can advance from pre-industrial to relativistic spaceflight in 2 centuries. The technological progression alone requires thousands of years of development. Humanity has always been good at doing things others consider impossible," Sarah said, with that strange smile still on her face. "May I share some information about my species and how we got here?" Cassandra nodded slowly, because what else could she do? Sarah reached into a pocket of her flight suit, and several weapons immediately tracked the movement. But she only pulled out a small data device. "This contains our history since your probe arrived," she explained. "With your permission, I will transfer it to your systems." Dr. Yelsha stepped forward and took the device with her hands trembling slightly. She connected it to a portable terminal and began reviewing the data while everyone waited in tense silence. "This cannot be real," Yelsha breathed after several minutes. "Admiral, you need to see this." The terminal projected a holographic timeline that showed Earth's progression, and the data made everyone in the docking bay forget to breathe. "Your probe entered our solar system in the year 2087 by our calendar," Sarah began explaining while gesturing to the timeline. "It was damaged and crashed on our moon, where we recovered it 3 years later. Our scientists studied it for 30 years and successfully reverse-engineered your faster-than-light communications array." The timeline showed images of humans in primitive spacesuits examining Valorian technology that should have been beyond their understanding. By 2150, we had developed our own crude faster-than-light drive based on the principles we learned from your probe, Sarah continued. "Interstellar colony was established in 2156 on a world we call New Terra. Since then, we have established 14 additional colonies throughout unclaimed space." 15 colonies in less than 80 years, Cassandra said quietly. "Most species take 500 years to establish that many settlements." "We had advantages," Sarah admitted. "Your probe gave us a head start on the physics, and our species tends toward rapid expansion when given the opportunity. We learned early in our history that hesitation often meant extinction." Drelmar studied the human with the eyes of a warrior who recognized another predator. "Why did you hide?" he asked bluntly. 15 colonies, and not once did you announce yourselves to the galactic community. Why lurk in the shadows?" Sarah's expression turned serious, and the smile disappeared. "Because we knew we were in someone else's territory," she replied honestly. "Your probe's databanks contained information about the Valorian Empire and other galactic powers. We realized that revealing ourselves too early might result in conquest or forced integration into systems we did not understand. So you spied on us," Seklan accused, from where she had been monitoring the conversation remotely. "We observed," Sarah corrected gently. "We watched the political movements, studied the trade routes, analyzed the military deployments. We learned everything we could about galactic civilization before deciding whether to join it." "And you developed weapons," Grenthor added, his voice coming through the communication link. "That ship of yours is armed, even if we cannot detect the weapons systems." Sarah did not deny it. "We prepared for the worst, while hoping for the best," she said simply. "My people have a saying, trust but verify. We wanted to be ready if contact went badly." "Why reveal yourselves now?" Yelsha asked, with her scientific curiosity overcoming her earlier disappointment. "What changed?" Sarah's expression darkened, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made every Valorian in the docking bay feel cold. 6 months ago, our deep space monitoring network detected massive gravitational anomalies in the region you call the Outer Veil, she explained, while pulling up new data on the holographic display. These are long-range sensor readings from our furthest outposts. The display showed energy signatures that made Cassandra's blood freeze. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands, all moving in coordinated formation towards civilized space, with energy outputs that dwarfed anything the Valorian Empire could produce. "We do not know who they are," Sarah continued quietly, "but their fleet movements suggest hostile intent, and their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than either of our civilizations. They destroyed 3 species in the outer veil before we detected them, and they are..." Silence filled the docking bay like a suffocating weight. "You are saying an invasion force is coming?" Drelmar asked, with his voice rough. "And you came to warn us?" "I came to propose an alliance," Sarah corrected. "Humanity has speed and stealth technology that could help evacuate populations or conduct hit-and-run attacks. The Valorian Empire has industrial capacity and military strength that we lack. Together we might have a chance to survive what is coming." Cassandra looked at the data showing the approaching fleet, and then at the human who had traveled across the stars to deliver this warning. "How do we know this is not a trick?" she asked carefully. "How do we know this mysterious fleet is not a human invasion force, and you are simply creating a false threat to gain our trust?" Sarah met her eyes directly, and what Cassandra saw there was not deception, but something harder and colder. "Admiral, if humanity wanted to invade your territory, you would not have seen us coming," Sarah said quietly. "That ship I arrived in is one of 30 that have been stationed throughout your home system for the past 72 hours. We could have struck at your homeworld before you knew we existed." Every security officer raised their weapons. "Stand down," Cassandra commanded sharply. "If she wanted us dead, we would already be dead. Threatening her now serves no purpose." The weapons lowered reluctantly. "You have 30 ships in our home system," Grenthor demanded over the communication link. "Had," Sarah corrected. "I just ordered them to decloak and transmit their positions to your fleet command. You should be receiving confirmation signals now." Seconds later, an aide's panicked voice came through the comm. "We are detecting 30 unknown vessels throughout the Valoria system. They just appeared on sensors simultaneously." Sarah looked at Cassandra with something like regret in her strange forward-facing eyes. "I am showing you our capabilities, not to threaten you, but to prove that we are serious," she said firmly. "The enemy coming from the outer veil will not give you warnings or offer alliances. They will simply attack, and they will not stop until everything is consumed." Before anyone could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. "Contact!" the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple unknown vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel at Sentinel 9, counting 47, no, 53 vessels and climbing." Sarah's face went pale. "They are here," she whispered. "God help us all, they are already here." The tactical display in the war room on Valoria Prime showed a nightmare unfolding at the edge of explored space. Sentinel 9 monitoring station floated helpless as 74 unknown vessels materialized from faster-than-light travel in a perfect sphere formation around it. Fleet Marshal Grenthor watched the energy readings with growing dread, because each enemy ship was outputting power signatures that matched a Valorian heavy cruiser. "Get me Commander Thexalor," he ordered, and within seconds the station commander's face appeared on screen, looking remarkably calm for someone surrounded by a hostile fleet. "Marshal, the unknown vessels are matching signatures from Captain Chen's data," Thexalor reported. "These are the same ships that destroyed 3 civilizations in the Outer Veil, designating them as Catharn Swarm based on the human intelligence briefing." "Can you escape?" Grenthor asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative, sir," Thexalor replied quietly. "They have us in a perfect containment field. We are reading gravitational distortions that would tear the station apart if we tried to move." On the holographic display, New contacts began appearing as the Catharn fleet deployed smaller attack craft that swarmed like insects around their capital ships. "How long until they attack?" Grenthor demanded. "Unknown, Marshal," Fexilor said. "They are scanning us, probably analyzing our technology and defenses before—" The transmission cut off as one of the Catharn ships fired a single brilliant lance of energy that punched through Sentinel 9's shields like they were made of paper. The station's reactor went critical and exploded in a brief flash of light that faded into the darkness. 74 Catharn vessels began accelerating toward Valorian space. "Deploy the fleet," Grenthor commanded with his voice hard as iron. "All available ships to the frontier. Establish a defensive line at the Krevian Nebula, and prepare for full engagement." Within minutes, the Valorian Imperial fleet began moving to intercept. 68 warships, including the dominant Reach, turned toward the approaching enemy and accelerated to maximum speed. Aboard the flagship, Captain Drelmar strode onto the bridge, with Admiral Cassandra beside him, while Sarah Chen followed at a respectful distance. "Captain Chen, you said your ships were in system," Cassandra stated. "Can they help us?" Sarah was already speaking into a small communication device in her own language, rapid-fire syllables that sounded harsh and urgent to Valorian ears. "All human vessels are moving to engage," she confirmed after a moment. "But Admiral, you need to understand something about the Catharn. They adapt quickly to enemy tactics, and they fight with a hive-mind coordination that makes them extremely dangerous." "We have fought coordinated enemies before," Drelmar said confidently. "Not like this," Sarah replied grimly. "The 3 species they destroyed had larger fleets than yours, and they all fell. Within weeks, the Catharn do not negotiate. They do not retreat until they win, and they do not leave survivors." The 2 fleets met at the Krevian Nebula, in a clash of violence that lit up the darkness like a new star being born. Valorian ships fought with the discipline and tactics that had won them an empire. They formed defensive lines, coordinated their fire, and used the nebula's dense gas clouds for cover, while their weapons hammered at the Catharn shields. For the first 10 minutes, it looked like the Valorians might hold. Then the Catharn adapted. Their shields shifted frequencies to better deflect Valorian weapons, while their own guns began targeting weak points in Valorian hull designs with surgical precision. 3 cruisers exploded in the first wave, and 4 more took critical damage before they could adjust. "They are learning our tactics too fast," Drelmar growled as he watched his fleet take losses. "Every maneuver we make, they counter within minutes." "Where are your ships, Captain Chen?" Cassandra demanded. 30 seconds out," Sarah replied, while watching her own tactical display. "My people fight differently than yours, Admiral. Do not be alarmed by what you are about to see." The human vessels appeared without warning. One moment the tactical display showed only Valorian and Catharn ships. The next moment, 30 new contacts materialized from stealth fields that had made them invisible to every sensor. They were smaller than Valorian warships. The largest was barely a third the size of a cruiser. But they moved with a speed and precision that made Drelmar catch his breath. The human ships did not form battle lines or coordinate defensive positions. Instead, they attacked like predators hunting prey. 3 human vessels accelerated to Point 8C and flashed past a Catharn dreadnought in less than a second, while firing weapons that looked like simple kinetic projectiles. The projectiles struck at relativistic speeds and punched holes straight through the Catharn shields and hull. The dreadnought shuddered and began venting atmosphere. Before the Catharn could respond, the human ships were already gone, having used the Valorian fleet as cover to disappear back into the tactical chaos. "They are using us as an anvil," Drelmar realized, "while they act as the hammer." "My people call it hammer and anvil tactics," Sarah confirmed. "Your ships are strong and can take punishment. You hold their attention while my ships strike from unexpected angles at maximum speed." 2 more human vessels appeared directly above a cluster of Catharn attack craft, and released what looked like small drones. The drones accelerated to 0.99 c in seconds and became relativistic kill missiles that obliterated everything they touched. Your weapons violate every treaty on ethical warfare, Cassandra observed as she watched the drones carve through the Catharn formation. The Catharn do not sign treaties, Sarah replied coldly, and my people learned long ago that survival matters more than honor when extinction is the alternative. The battle raged for 2 hours, and in that time the combined Valorian human fleet inflicted terrible damage on the Catharn. 17 enemy ships were destroyed, and 23 more took critical damage, but victory came at a cost. 14 Valorian ships were destroyed outright, and 9 more were crippled beyond repair. The human fleet lost 6 vessels, with 3 more damaged badly enough that they could barely maneuver. The Catharn are retreating, Tactical reported, with surprise evident in the officer's voice. They are breaking off and jumping to faster than light. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Sarah's expression remained grim. This was not their main fleet, she said quietly. This was a scouting force. They came to test our capabilities and learn our tactics. How do you know? Cassandra asked, though part of her already feared the answer. Because they are leaving survivors, Sarah explained. The Catharn only leave survivors when they plan to return with overwhelming force. They want us to sit here thinking we won while they prepare to crush us completely. Drelmar studied the human with new respect. Your people have fought them before, he stated rather than asked. Not directly, Sarah admitted, but we studied the ruins of the species they destroyed, and we analyzed their tactics from the debris fields. We know how they think and how they fight, because my people have a saying, know your enemy. She turned to face both Cassandra and Drelmar, with an intensity that made them both pay attention. Admiral, Captain, we won today because the Catharn were not expecting human tactics, and because they underestimated how well our species could work together, Sarah said urgently. But they will be back within days or weeks with 10 times this force, and next time they will be ready for everything we use today. Then we prepare. Grenthor's voice came through the communication link from Valoria Prime. Captain Chen, your people proved themselves today. Humanity has earned the right to stand with the Valorian Empire as equals rather than subjects. Sarah inclined her head in acknowledgement of the honor being offered. Marshal, my government has authorized me to propose a formal military alliance. In exchange for Valorian industrial support and raw materials, humanity will provide our stealth technology, our tactical database on the Catharn, and our skip drive systems that allow near-light speed travel. Skip drive? Cassandra repeated. The technology that lets our ships move at relativistic speeds without liquefying the crew, Sarah explained. We can retrofit your vessels with inertial dampening systems that will increase their combat effectiveness by a factor of 3. Grenthor appeared on the main view screen from his office on Valoria Prime, and his expression showed the calculation of a leader weighing survival against pride. The Valorian Empire accepts your alliance, Captain Chen, he declared formally. Let it be recorded that on this day, humanity and Valoria stand together against the darkness. Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Then we need to start preparing immediately, she said, while pulling up tactical data. Because I estimate we have 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we are lucky, before the Catharn return with their full invasion fleet. 2 weeks to prepare for a war we cannot win, Drelmar asked quietly. 2 weeks to learn how to fight like humans, Sarah corrected him. My species has been fighting wars since before we discovered fire. We have lost more battles than most species ever fight, and we have been driven to the edge of extinction dozens of times throughout our history. Then how did you survive? Cassandra asked. Sarah's eyes held something ancient and terrible. Because humans have one trait that has kept us alive through ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have killed us all, she said quietly. We never give up, ever, No matter how bad things get or how hopeless the situation seems, humanity keeps fighting until either we win or there is nobody left to fight. She gestured to the tactical display, showing the damaged fleets, limping back towards safety. The Catharn think they are apex predators, Sarah continued with her voice growing harder. They think they can consume civilizations like they have consumed others before. But they have never encountered a species that spent its entire evolutionary history as both predator and prey, that learned to cooperate and compete simultaneously, that developed a culture based on the idea that surrender is worse than death. They are about to learn, she finished grimly, that humanity does not lose wars. We just find new ways to win them. 13 days after the first battle, the Catharn returned, and this time they brought everything. The Deep Space Monitoring Network detected them hours before they arrived. 247 capital ships, supported by thousands of attack craft and drone fighters. The fleet was large enough to conquer a dozen star systems, and it was heading straight for Valoria Prime. Fleet Marshal Grenthor stood in the war room, watching the approaching armada with the calm acceptance of a warrior who knew he might be seeing his last battle. "Status of the combined fleet?" he asked quietly. 93 Valorian vessels ready for combat," Admiral Cassandra reported from her position aboard the refitted Dominant Reach. 44 human ships in position, with another 30 holding in reserve. Total combined strength of 167 combat vessels against 247 Catharn capital ships plus support craft. The math was brutal, and everyone knew it. "We are outnumbered," Drelmar stated unnecessarily. "We are always outnumbered," Sarah Chen replied from where she stood beside him on the flagship's bridge, wearing a Valorian combat pressure suit that had been modified to fit her smaller human. "The trick is making them think that does not matter." Over the past 13 days, the human and Valorian crews had worked together around the clock to prepare for this moment. Valorian engineers had learned human stealth technology, while human technicians installed skip drive systems in 60 Valorian warships. The result was a fleet that moved faster and hit harder than anything the Catharn had faced before. But it might not be enough. "All ships report ready," Tactical announced as the countdown began. "Catharn fleet arriving in 3 minutes." Sarah activated her personal communication link to the human fleet. "All units, this is Chen," she transmitted in English. "Remember what we talked about. Hit fast, hit hard, and make them chase you. Use the Valorian ships for cover, and never stay in one place long enough to become a target. If your ship gets crippled, do not surrender, because the Catharn do not take prisoners." "Inspiring speech," Drelmar commented dryly. "My people do not need inspiration," Sarah replied. "We need targets." The Catharn fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a formation that looked like a massive sphere, a wall of ships bristling with weapons and shields that flickered with stolen technology from a dozen dead civilizations. "They are hailing us," communications reported with surprise. "Put it through," Grenthor commanded from Valoria Prime. The voice that emerged from the speakers was cold and mechanical, like something that had never known mercy or compassion. "Valorian Empire, you are to be consumed," the Catharn declared without preamble or negotiation. "Your resistance in the previous encounter was noted. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." "Tell them," Grenthor said slowly and clearly, "that the Valorian Empire does not surrender to parasites." A moment of silence followed before the Catharn responded. "Then you will all die," they stated simply, and the channel closed. The Catharn fleet began moving forward, like a tide of metal and violence. "Engage," Grenthor ordered, and the combined fleet surged forward to meet them. The battle that followed would be studied by military academies for centuries, if anyone survived to study it. The Valorian ships formed the center of the defensive line, anchoring their formation around 3 super-heavy dreadnoughts that had been pulled from dockyards and rushed into service. They poured fire into the Catharn fleet, with their main guns hammering at enemy shields, while fighters swarmed between the capital ships like angry insects. The Catharn advanced with their usual coordinated precision and began targeting Valorian weak points with weapons that had been calibrated based on data from the first battle. 3 Valorian cruisers exploded in the opening minutes. Then the human fleet attacked from 3 different directions simultaneously. Sarah's ship, designated Persistence, in a gesture that Drelmar found grimly appropriate, led a squadron of 10 human vessels in a high-speed strike against the Catharn left flank, while moving at 0.87 C. They fired relativistic kinetic rounds that punched through Catharn shields and armor like they were tissue paper, before vanishing back into the tactical chaos. "They are adapting," Tactical shouted as Catharn ships began shifting positions to counter the human attacks. Vessels deploying point defense systems optimized for high-velocity projectiles. "They learn fast," Drelmar acknowledged, "but can they learn fast enough?" The answer came seconds later, when a human ship, the Defiant Spirit, took a direct hit from 3 Catharn destroyers simultaneously. Its shields collapsed, and its hull ruptured, but instead of trying to retreat, the crippled vessel accelerated toward the nearest Catharn dreadnought. "What are they doing?" Cassandra demanded. "Ramming speed," Sarah replied with her voice tight with emotion. "The captain knows his ship is dead, so he is making it count." The Defiant Spirit struck the Catharn dreadnought at 0.9 C, and the resulting explosion was bright enough to be seen from Valoria Prime. Both ships ceased to exist in a flash of released energy that took out 2 nearby Catharn cruisers as collateral damage. "Humans are insane," Drelmar breathed. "Humans are survivors," Sarah corrected him. "And we know that sometimes the only way to win is to make the enemy pay such a high price for victory that they question whether it was worth it." The battle raged for 4 hours, and the casualties mounted on both sides. 23 Valorian ships were destroyed, and 31 more were damaged. 15 human vessels were lost, including 6 that self-destructed, rather than let the Catharn capture their technology. But the Catharn losses were even more severe. 74 capital ships destroyed, 92 heavily damaged, and thousands of support craft reduced to debris. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Catharn fleet began to show signs of disorganization. Their coordinated attacks became less precise, and their formations started to spread apart as individual ship commanders made decisions instead of following the hive mind. "They are breaking," Tactical reported with disbelief evident. "Catharn fleet is fragmenting. Individual ships are attempting to retreat." "Do not let them escape," Grenthor commanded. "Pursue and destroy. I want every Catharn ship that entered this system to die here." The combined fleet fell upon the retreating Catharn like wolves bringing down wounded prey. Sarah's Perseverance led the chase with her crew, pushing their skip drive beyond safe limits to catch fleeing enemy vessels. She personally targeted a Catharn command ship that was trying to escape to faster than light, and her weapons officer placed 3 kinetic rounds directly into its engine core. The Catharn ship exploded, and Sarah allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. "All Catharn vessels destroyed or disabled," Tactical finally reported as the last enemy ship was reduced to burning wreckage. "We are reading no surviving Catharn life signs in the system." Silence filled the bridge of the dominant reach as everyone processed what they had just accomplished. "We won?" someone whispered. "We survived," Cassandra corrected, which is the same thing. She turned to look at Sarah, who was slumped in her station, with exhaustion written across her features and what might have been tears on her face. "Your people lost 15 ships today, Captain," Cassandra said quietly. "How many crew?" 1,347, Sarah replied, without needing to check the numbers, because she had been counting each loss. 1,347 humans who knew they might not come home, but fought anyway, because that is what we do. They will be honored. Grenthor's voice came through the communication link. Every human who died today will be remembered as a hero of the Empire. Sarah nodded, but said nothing because words felt inadequate. The tactical display updated with new information, and Sarah sat up straighter as she read the data. "Admiral, I am receiving transmissions from Earth," she announced. "The Second Fleet has been deployed and is requesting our position." "How many ships?" Drelmar asked. Sarah smiled, and it was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in days. 300 combat vessels, she reported, plus support ships, colony transports, and enough industrial equipment to build a shipyard in system. She looked at Cassandra. Grenthor with something like hope in her eyes. "Admiral, Marshal, my government is not sending a relief force," she explained. "They are sending a migration. Earth is preparing to move its entire military infrastructure into Valorian space because we have decided that this is where humanity makes its stand." "Why?" Grenthor asked with genuine curiosity. "You could retreat to your hidden colonies and remain safe." "Because we learned something today," Sarah replied firmly. "We learned that we do not have to stand alone, that there are other species in this galaxy worth fighting beside and worth protecting." She gestured to the tactical display, showing the damaged but victorious combined fleet. "The Catharn thought they could consume the galaxy one civilization at a time," she continued, with her voice growing stronger. "They thought that isolated species would fall before a coordinated assault. But they were wrong, because today humanity and Valoria proved that cooperation is stronger than conquest." Drelmar extended his hand in a very human gesture that Sarah had taught him. "Then let us build something together," he said. "A fleet that can protect not just our two species, but any civilization that refuses to bow to predators like the Catharn." Sarah clasped his hand, and they shook on an agreement that would reshape the galaxy. On Earth, 15 light-years away, the Second Fleet prepared to deploy, while engineers worked around the clock, building weapons and ships for a war that humanity had chosen to fight, not because they had to, but because it was the right thing to do. In the debris field around Valoria Prime, the damaged ships began rescue operations and repair work, while human and Valorian crews worked side by side with a camaraderie forged in battle. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the remnants of the Catharn swarm retreated to their masters with a report that would change everything. A new species in the galaxy, and they did not fight like anything the Catharn had ever encountered before. They fought like humans, and humans never stopped fighting until either they won or there was nobody left alive to remember the battle. The galaxy would never be the same.